Okay. First, we want to thank Tzach, Rabbi Butman, and Rabbi Pevsner for the wonderful initiative, as well as Rabbi Aftzin for the Shul's Association putting together the online shiurim and making it open to the public. So we're going to begin a very gishmak limud and a limud that has a very, very specific school for our time. Beina Mitzarim, between Shivasa B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, which is the time of Avelos, but by Yidden, Befrat by Chassidim, the goal is not to mourn something we don't have as much as making it happen. And we know the Eibishter told Yecheskel Hanavi al Nahar Kvar, it's a tremendous chiddush, and the Nevuah in Chutz La'aretz, and the Eibishter told him that he should go and tell Bnei Yisrael how the Beis HaMikdash is going to look. The whole Nevuah Yecheskel. And Yecheskel Hanavi said to the Eibishter, why should I make them feel bad? They just went into Galus, and they have many years ahead of them. Right after they went into Galus, wanted to make them feel bad, said the Eibishter that because Yidna and Galus, Binyan Beisi Batel, like the building of the Beis HaMikdash will be on pause. If they learn about it, that's building. Therefore, we want to do something about it. We don't just want to kvetch. It's a very Yiddish thing to do, and therefore we are learning, and it's also for us Siddim Lubavitch, it's a personal bakasha of the Rebbe to make it happen by sitting and learning. So we're going to begin Maseches Midos, and Kishmoy Kain Hu, it's the measurements of the Beis HaMikdash. So, Bechlal, to appreciate measurements, I'm going to give a short Hakdama, and we'll jump right inside. To appreciate measurements, you have to appreciate the house, and not all of us are going to be contractors. So you have to have very specific, it's a specific type of intelligence, spatial intelligence. You have to, have an appreciation for all this. So I want to make an Akdama that talks to all of us. And I don't know if you got an opportunity to visit. There's the mansions, Cape Cod, there's different Buckingham Palace, and we're one of the striking uniqueness of these, the way these mansions and palaces run, is that there's a room dedicated for every specific function of the family, and there's an etiquette. There's minhagi hamakayim where you have to act that way in that room, and it's part of the malchus of the king that he has a room dedicated for. Whether it's there's slave, the servants are not allowed to go into specific rooms, and when they're in these rooms, this is the way to act. And we all know that when you come to talk to a king, even us in halacha, when we stand, even though the whole davening is in front of the Eibishter, but when we stand shmaneser, which is a stage closer to have the kamara, then there are different rules how to answer, what you're allowed to, if you're allowed to stop, different afsakim based on where you're holding in davening. Have the kamara when you're standing by shmaneser, there's different rules also, even though the whole davening went in front of the Eibishter. So this played out in physicality in the Beis HaMikdash. Every room had a designated purpose, and it was respected as such to the extreme that it had that name. It was only used for that. And when a person came in to do that function or to use that room, he was totally immersed in that inyan. There was no passivity. There was no a person in chitzonius. It was very pnimi. Where a person went for ktoides, it was about the only thing that existed. It was ktoides, because the room gave that feeling. That was the name of the room, and you weren't just allowed to go in just for nothing. And everything about it said that, and that will give us an appreciation for all the details we are going to learn in this Masechta. When he talks about a name of a room and what its function is, we have to be ready for the Geula Mitzvah Shlema, and ready to know what each room is and how to put ourselves in that state of mind and that frame of mind to go in. And so that's a few words on the way the Beis HaMikdash is built. The way the Beis HaMikdash is structured, and then I'm going to mention one more thing about Maseches Midos, which is about the second Beis HaMikdash. It's describing Binyan Hordus, which Hordus built or rebuilt the second Beis HaMikdash based on his understanding. He was very big in architecture. He was in Rome, and he came back, and he built several buildings in Eretz Yisrael and Mahavil $1,000. He wanted to fix. He wanted to fix a shreklach, a thing that avla that he did. He killed many Chafnei Yisrael, and they gave him a suggestion. If you want to fix, you were mechaba oirei, basically put out the candles in Israel, killed men, tell me to come. You want to fix it, rekindle the fire of the Yidden, which is by the base of English, and he built it according to his understanding. Now, why are we learning this? If we know that the Bayis Shlish is going to be based on Yecheskel, which is a Nevuah, even though Bayis Sheni, the second base of English, was built after the Nevuah Yecheskel, but not everything was understood. And therefore, they even a little knew that there's going to be a Golos afterwards. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash, they sensed that there may be a Golos afterwards. The Haraya, it was missing. They never got out the Aring and 5 basic cables of the Beis Hamikdash, and they sensed that, and they knew that the Nevuah Yecheskel was never totally translated into Ma'aseh B'Poel. Was never recognized, realized. But still, there's tremendous value in learning the tzir of Bayis Sheni, because as we mentioned, every room that we're going to learn about, that put you in a frame of mind, that's where they did certain things. That's what's going to be in Bayis Shlishi, just in a different shape, different dimensions. We know that I see that Eretz Yisrael is going to be much larger, and Yerushalayim and the base of Meir is going to be the size of Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is the whole size of Eretz Yisrael. Everything's going to expand, but the general concept began at the Mishkan, and it translated to Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni, Mesos Hashem, Bayis Shlishi, take it from Yad. It's going to have these concepts. So the Mishnah actually doesn't begin with the measurements. The first Mishnah begins discussing a mishmar of covet. When a person came in, there were always guards. Actually, machlokes whether the mitzvah of Shmiras HaMikdash was only by night when there wasn't action, so they wanted to have presence there. It shouldn't be like an empty house, or it was every moment of the day. But there was a chiyuv of 3 koyanim that would guard. They would guard in the Azara, and then Levim, which were not allowed to be stam in the Azara, definitely not allowed to sit. And so there were 21 places where Levim guarded, and we'll go through them now. Zok the Mishnah. 3 places the koyanim guarded. The base of Tinas, which is the place, as we're going to see soon, the place where the Ketores was prepared, or based on Nitzutz, which was, Nitzutz is a spark, which was a place that there was always fire. If they needed inside for warming up the feet of the koyanim, they were always walking barefoot in the base of Mikdash. They needed fire, that's where there was. There are 2 different sides, actually, of the Azara, as we'll see in a minute. Or the base, Hamoikit, which was the dormitory of the koyanim. The dormitory of the koyanim of that base up. So let's look for a second. Resting? Yeah. Okay. They lived there with us. For the time being, when they were there. Okay, so let me give you a little. This one here. This is the Azara. This is equivalent to the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Kodesh in the time of the Mishkan. Okay, this is called Ezra's Koyan in this area, and on the right side, this means on the Durham side, this side, there was a Shar Hamayim. We'll go through more detail, but there was like an entrance for every type of carbon, and for every different usage, there was actually a different entrance, very similar to the way it is, as I was mentioning earlier, in Buckingham Palace, let's say, the Haftel of Abdullah or big mansions. There was, just to give you that understanding, a carbon that was Kache Kadashim, which is a much higher status of Karbonis. They have to be eaten. Kache Kadashim only Kohen eat, and they have to finish everything. Kohen Eichel Bailam Eskaprim. Kache Kadashim. Karbonis, right? So Karbonis and Kache Kadashim had a much higher status. Only Kohen could eat it. They can only eat it b'soich HaKoloim. They were only allowed to eat it in a very limited place within this Azara. Those animals had their own entrance. They had to bring them from one entrance, which was called Shar HaKarbon, which was on Tzafin side. Why? Because, and I'm going to explain this in you now, it'll come up again and again, Tzafin side, which is the northern side, was right across the open entrance to the Kodesh. On the southern side, on the Durham side, the Mizbeach was blocking the door. If you look, right, this is the door going into the Kodesh. This to the southern side was open, and therefore the karbanos that they were makrib on the southern side were the higher status. Shchitasam batzapin. And therefore these karbanos, they came in from southern side, from Shara Karban, just to symbolize that these are a higher status karban. I was mentioning that there was an etiquette, there was a seder, there was mannerisms for each, and they this carbon is not this carbon. Carbon oil is not a carbon shlomim. Carbon shlomim, where every Joe Shmo or Yid, I mean, obviously he has to be tired and he has to have kavanah, makes a special bracha, alachil's kachim, but every Yid could eat it. Kachim Kadashim is a higher status, so it came in from a different entrance on the south inside to remind us that this has to be shefted on the south inside across the entrance. Much heliger. Masha enke kachim kalin. An example of kachim kalim is carbon pesach. Every Yid had to eat carbon pesach. It was shechted in the basin. Sprinkle the blood in the base of the Then every Yid had to eat it throughout the whole Yerushalayim. That entrance was brought in, that carbon was brought in through Shara B'chayris, which symbolized karbanos, which could be eat their lower status. They could be shefted even Durham side, Shchidasim B'chol Malkam Ba'azara. We say in the morning, we say Shchidasim anywhere could be. Because they're a lower status. So we're slowly getting deeper and deeper into the feel of how the etiquette and how the designated places in the Beis HaMikdash gave them the status and made the people feel and understand where they're standing and what they're handling based on the carbon. So, back to where we were holding up. So we started describing the three places where the Koyanim were allowed to watch. And the Koyanim watched in areas that were in the Azara. A Levi wasn't allowed to hang out, it was allowed to just come in. Beis Tinas, this is on the Durham side. Beis Tinas, we know Beis Tinas is a family name of Koyanim, that they had a specific Masorah how to make the Ketores, the exact amounts. They knew a specific ingredient called Maila Asham, which we just mentioned in Pirkei Avos, that one of the 10 Nisim Shemasa was saying in Beis HaMikdash was Ma'olam Le'nitzcha and Haruach Samad Asham. It never, the wind never knocked over, or never made it slack. The Ketores that were going up, and this family knew the exact measure, the exact ingredients, and how to make it. And actually, the Mishnah doesn't have great things to say about them because they didn't want to tell over that secret. So when they died out, and so this was the room named over in their name. That was one place Koyanim guarded. The second place was Beis HaMoikid, right? Moikid means the fireplace, and this is like a big room, and we'll learn about it more. This was, like I mentioned, the dormitory where the Kohanim slept. They slept. If you see this room is split. Half is inside the Azara, and half is outside the Azara. The place where the Kohanim of that base of that was serving that week were sleeping in the outside of the Azara, and the inside was already considered Kaddish. There was actually pispus and markings on the floor. And then this was based on Nitzutz, the area where they kept fire always going, like a Ner Tamid, so they can always get fire. You know?
Based on make it also fire almost all the time.
Right. Because they had to warm their feet. There was a mikveh there. Okay, so these are the three places where the Koyanim guarded, and now we're going to talk about where the Levim guarded. Levim guarded al Esrim, the Esrim, Levim, the Esrim, Echad Malkim. Chamisha al Chamisha Shari Harabayis. We'll learn a little later. There were 5 entrances for Harabayis. 5 entrances into Harabayis. These are 5 Levim. Let's just keep count. Okay. Then there are another 4 Levim. Arba Pinois of Mitoichoi. That brings us to 9. Okay. Hamisha Shari HaAzara. Okay, the Azara, there were 5 main entrances. Okay, and as I mentioned, soon we go through what they are, but we already mentioned 3 of them. There's also Shar Nikener and another Shar farther back where they guarded. And Hamisha Shari HaAzara, Arba Pinoiseha Mi Bachutz. The 4 Shari Azara, the 4 corners of the Azara outside, so over here, and over here. And And the Echad Belishkas HaKarban, which is the Lishkas HaKarban, is in. It's not the same as Lishkas HaKlan. Sorry. It's in Beis HaMikdash, that was Lishkas HaKlan. That's where they prepared the carbon. I don't remember right now. Okay. And to check the Lishkas HaParechas, the Echad Lachar Beis HaKaparis, Lishkas HaParechas is the place where they wove the Parechas. It's not clear exactly where it is. The Echad Lachar Beis HaKaparis, one was behind the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So let's just picture this for a second, and we'll conclude Mishnah Aleph. If a person came to the Beis HaMikdash in the middle of the night, if he came to the Beis HaMikdash in the middle of the night, it wasn't empty. There was a mishmash of covered. There always, and it was a chiyuv to be there, and we'll see in the next Mishnah what happens if somebody fell asleep on guard. They all had to be standing, or they were allowed to sit, but definitely not allowed to fall asleep. But you saw, there's some Mepharshim discussed, there's some Mepharshim that maintain that there was a special levush that they had, so it looked like they were there for. It wasn't just a person hanging around; that it was noticeable that they were there for this Mishnah. Base. Ish Harabais, the man that was on top of Harabais, he was Mimuna over the Shoim. This was his position. He would go around to all of these posts. He would go with a big torch. If he wasn't standing, which means he was sitting, and that was fine.
The Shema had to say.
The Shomer had to say Shalom Aleichem. And if he didn't say, So there was an interaction between them. Nikashu Yasher, but however, if Rahman Islam, it was noticed that he was mezalzel in his mission, and he fell asleep. He would hit him to wake him up. Or the Shulz Hoyaloi Lisrav, as Ksusa would find that Kainim were very zealous about people that were Mazazel in the base of English. It was their personal, agenda, and their personal responsibility was not only to represent Bnei Yisrael. It's a very important point. The job of the Kainim was not only to represent Bnei Yisrael in the avoid of the base of English. Their job was also to teach Bnei Yisrael what the base of English is, and that was through the Mishmashal Kavod. And also through Manuel Islam, giving an einish if that wasn't followed through with. We find this also in Mishnayos Yoma. We find it in numerous places in Mishnayos, but in Mishnayos Yoma it's spelled out that even though anybody was allowed to take the carbon, the Sarla Azazel Kohen decided this is our project, and they taught everybody. But basically, it was their achrayus, and the Rebbe always quotes the famous Rambam that Loi Shevet Levi Bilvad. This is a job that wasn't only for Shevet Levi. Anybody who wants to step up to the plate and wants to take on that schus of teaching Bnei Yisrael, he has the schus of being Shevet Levi, obviously in the figurative way. But the Rambam says this, and the Rebbe urges Chassidim to be the ones to remind everybody of their position and their role in this world, and to make it happen. Okay, and let's just finish Mishnah base. He had permission from the Kohanim.
From Menashamayim,
Remember the first one was not good. The Haim Oimrim, and they would say, the Kohanim would say to each other, at this minute, they would say to each other, Ma Kol Bazar, what's the sound? And they would answer, Kol Ben Levi Loikio God of Nisrafim, why? Shiyashen Al Mishmaroi, he's sleeping on his post. They would obviously burn not his big corner, they would burn his private clothing, and that he would be sleeping on. That means they wouldn't be sleeping in their big corner. Not let it. The fact that it had shatnez inside, so only the time of that later. Rav Lazar ben Yaakov, Pam achas matzu zachi ima yoshin. He once found my uncle sleeping. The surf was ksusoi, and Rav Lazar ben Yaakov apparently is saying this was the practice. Therefore, let's hope this is the beginning, the first step in our learning and being the kind, the Rav, the Eibishter, the Cheskel, and the Rebbe's Bakasha from Chassidim. Let us say,